Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, His Highness, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates, and the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Bahrain.
Thursday, August 13th, the Trump administration released a series of breathless communiques proclaiming the onset of the formal peace and diplomatic recognition between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. Shortly thereafter, the Israeli government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu echoed the American releases in both substance and theme.
This day is a pivot of history. It heralds a new dawn of peace.
The Emirati leader, Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, was far less gushy in his own announcement, but critically, the contradicted nothing stated by Trump or Netanyahu. But wait a minute, don't the Arabs hate Israel? Why in the world would a rich Arab state on the far side of the Arabian Peninsula want to exchange ambassadors with the Zionists? It isn't so much that the Emirates don't care about the Palestinians anymore, although they really don't, and instead it's bound up with the rapidly simplifying American position in the Middle East. The Americans have nearly completed their pullout from the overall region, and the Emirates are hoping to get ahead of their rapidly disintegrating geopolitical environment. Welcome to The World is Changing.
Representatives of 28 countries, with Lord Halifax signing for the United Kingdom, meet in the conference room of Washington's State Department for the signing of the Bretton Woods Monetary Agreement. Authorized by President Truman to sign for the United States was Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Vinson. Theoretically, Bretton Woods is an international pool of the goodwill of nations subscribing to the agreement.
In the aftermath of World War II, the Americans crafted the global order to bribe up an alliance to fight the Soviets. Part of that was funding, rebuilding, financing the construction of industrial plants, and the enabling of the Europeans and East Asians, the present-day European Union, China, Japan, South Korea, to access the American consumer markets. All that required oil, and the oil for the most part came from the Middle East. And so the Americans went to the Middle East. We are now 30 years after the Soviet collapse.
In August 1991, communist hardliners staged a coup attempt after Mikhail Gorbachev proposed greater independence for the republics of the Soviet Union. Boris Yeltsin led a popular resistance to put down the coup, and the Communist Party was suspended. In December, Yeltsin and other republic leaders created the Commonwealth of Independent States. Gorbachev then resigned, and the Soviet Union was officially dissolved.
The Americans are done managing the world, and the Americans are especially done managing the Middle East. They are going home. Troop rotation have outnumbered permanent deployments in the region for years. The Iraqi deployment is quickly approaching zero. The Syrian deployment is no longer more than a rounding error, really. Only Afghanistan remains as a meaningful deployment, and is a deployment few Americans want to continue.
Suspicion became fact Tuesday when officials confirmed President Trump's order to withdraw troops from Afghanistan and Iraq. With 2 months left in office, the president is trying to fulfill a campaign promise, and the recently named acting defense secretary confirmed the news. Troop numbers in both countries will decrease to 2,500.
From the United Arab Emirates' point of view, this is an unmitigated disaster. The UAE and their fellow Gulf states of Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, and Qatar don't care what US troops do in the Middle East, or how many locals they kill, or how many US troops die at the hands of locals. They simply want the Americans present, both regional and really around the world. As long as the global superpower is active, the Gulf states don't have to worry about guarding the production, processing, and exporting infrastructure for their oil and natural gas, so long as the Americans are globally engaged and guaranteeing freedom of the seas for all. The Gulf states know their hydrocarbon exports will safely arrive at their customers' ports. For them, it's that simple. For the Emiratis in specific and the Gulf states in general, the Americans are past the point of no return, which conjures up multiple reinforcing disasters. Now we are going to take a look at them. First of all, Iran.
Fundamentalism took hold with a fury and a force that helped ignite the still impoverished masses in Iran, who felt they had little reason to be grateful to the Shah. The fabulous profits from oil had not filtered down to them.
The Iranian Revolution was a series of events that culminated in the overthrow of the Pahlavi dynasty under Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and the replacement of his government with an Islamic Republic under the Grand Ayatollah Khomeini, leader of one of the factions in the revolt. The Iranian military is not the most impressive, and really it was designed to oppress its own population, not invade its own neighbors. Its air force hasn't really been updated since the fall of the Shah in 1979, and the Iranians are running out of jets to fall out of the sky. Its navy, well, doesn't have a navy, it has a bunch of speedboats. Yet as unimpressive as I am with the Iranian military, it is the freaking Roman legion compared to the militaries of the Gulf states. The Emiratis and Saudis are getting some good target practice for their air forces in Yemen, but their armies are largely paperweights, and none of them have a navy that's more than a coast guard. Not only have they all depended upon the Americans to do their fighting for them, most consider a functional domestic military a potential threat to their ruling dynasties. Key thing to keep in mind when considering the United States in the Middle East. The US was primarily interested in the Middle East oil for its alliance network, really, not for itself. Historically, the United States has gotten nearly all of its crude from its own territories, or its North American neighbors, plus actually Venezuela. With America's shale revolution now midway through its second decade, technically it is already energy independent. Its need for Middle Eastern oil has gone from minor to nearly non-existent, not so for pretty much anyone else. Despite all the green rhetoric on wind, solar, and the like, combined they still generate only 2% of the world's total energy needs, oil and natural gas clocking at more than half, and for the most of the world it must be imported from the Persian Gulf. Outside powers who have been dependent upon the Americans to maintain energy flows can do the math. Outside powers who have navies can do the math even faster. The first time there's a real energy crisis anywhere in the world after the Americans have left the Middle East, we're going to see some records broken for sailing times from the United Kingdom, France, India, and Japan to the Persian Gulf. The Gulf states might not like the Americans very much, but the Americans have had a vested interest in the Gulf states remaining independent and working and making boatloads of money by selling their hydrocarbons for the locals. It was a sweet deal. Any post-American power that comes to the Gulf is unlikely to be nearly as understanding. So what does this all have to do with a normalization of relations deal between the UAE and Israel? Simply put, the Emiratis know the Americans are leaving and they are massively and hysterically unable to look out for their own interest in the world that's coming. Between the threats of Iran, their own population, and extra regional powers, none of them are long for this world, unless they can get help. They need someone who can help them resist Iran. They need someone who can help them infiltrate and purge undesirable elements from their own population. They need someone who can help them stand up to outsiders. Banding together is off the table. As much as the Gulf states dislike Iran, they even dislike one another even less. These are not countries, these are dynasties.